As I suspected, 32 flavors.
Well, hello everyone. I'm assuming that if you are here because you see what is the name of the video in the title. This is about Big Game number 2, the first ever huge crossover in the Miller world of Mark Millar. And luckily, I have the privilege and the honor of Mr. Wakazashi's Tea House, aka Gray, joining me to talk about this issue. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Great to be here, Nick Weiser, and I really appreciate you having me on your channel.
Oh, dude, hey, the feelings are so mutual. I've been, like I said, I'm a fan of what you do on your videos. So I was just like, I was excited to ask you. So I'm just like, yes, he said yes. I'm like, so this is what it's like when she says yes. So
I tell you what,
I
we
was
got a
really
lot to talk about with this, haven't we? Flipping heck.
Oh, yes. And you know what? You're right. We do because guys, if you're watching this video, this is basically our this is your warning. This is your very direct warning. This issue is a complete spoiler. So if you're going to this territory and you haven't read this issue and you want to, so either you don't mind spoilers, and if you do, this is the time to get out and then come back when you have read this issue because this whole entire issue, and we're not joking when we say this entire issue is a spoiler. This is not one of those like hyperbolic comments. This is not a clickbait thing. This is not being figurative. This is a literal thing. Spoilers. All right. So, you know what? Here we are. Let's talk about the story. So, right off the bat, we have the Chrononauts being picked up by a few people, or at least they're meeting up with them. And I'm not familiar with who the characters are, and I'm going to admit that right off the bat, but clearly they're definitely from the Miller world. And they decide to go back in time. And they go back in time to a certain iconic franchise, a very iconic franchise whom we will not name. But if you know how to connect the dots for legal purposes, for we like Mark and we want to keep him protected, it's one of those things where you connect the dots and you figure out. And for me, what I got out of that walkie, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, but for me, that scene was the equivalent of living in the best dream you've ever had and then waking up to your greatest nightmare ever because everything is super awesome and hopeful. You're like, oh, this is cool that this is happening. And then all of a sudden, boom, everything just starts to go launching right off the bat. So, what did you get out of that whole spiel?
I really enjoyed the opening. It was a good kind of, well, it worked as a good recap, didn't it, Nick? The first issue. So
Yeah.
we're told that basically superheroes have been wiped out. The world is
Hmm.
being secretly run by supervillains. And
Hmm.
the Chrononauts, they kind of like, they don't believe this to begin with. They're like, come on, you're having a joke, aren't you?
Yeah,
But
it
we've
sounds like a
got
conspiracy theory.
It does
Totally.
exactly, and Mark Miller has a lot of fun with that, doesn't he? He's kind of making
Oh,
little digs here and there, putting little jokes in about, yeah,
yeah.
who's really running the world, Nick?
Yeah. Oh, I know, right? It kind of reminds me of if I'm not sure if you've ever read Watchmen, but it kind of gave me a
Oh
little bit of a
yeah,
Watchmen vibe in that, especially. And I guess I'm kind of jumping the gun here. This is a theory of mine. I wonder if this has like a loose Watchmen connection because if you recall, in 1986, the first Watchmen comic release, because it was originally a monthly release of all 12
nice.
issues and that was in late
Mm,
1986. And where
yeah.
are they going back into? 1985, a year before the events of 1986 happened, before the villains took over, which is obviously from the events of Wanted, where they trace
Mm,
back to 1986. I'm like, either that's happened or either that's how there's a weird connection there or that's just a really really clever way of acknowledging those events because if you think
mm,
about it the way comics have been running historically since the 80s, that was kind of the beginning eras of the deconstruction wave of comics, and obviously Mark has a lot of those type of comics in his arsenal, a lot of those deconstruction type of stories. And for a lot of people, that was the beginning of the change of heroism, the beginning of the era of the darker characters and more of the anti-heroes. So I thought about Watchmen and the rise of the anti-heroes and the Dark Knight Returns of the world. And that seemed
mm.
like to be a either that's a big coincidence or there's a parallel there or homage, whatever you want to interpret. That's what I got out of that. I'm like, dude, that almost just there's no way this can't be at the very minimum loosely connected. Or I'm just crazy. Maybe that's my comic book conspiracy. What do you think?
No, that's a great point. I haven't even thought about that. The 1986 Watchmen connection. I just love the way that we go back in time and we see a beautiful looking, what appears to be New York, isn't it? On 42nd Street. And we're
Yeah.
getting hints about, okay, this is where he works. We're going to see him hopefully very soon. But Nick, they're not telling us who it is, are they? But you know, if you know Mark
The
Miller, you know
booth.
who they are.
We'll just say
Hinting.
the booth. We're not going to say specifically once again to
Yeah.
protect, but the booth, and then that up in the sky moment, and then the collision, and you're just like, and you feel like a sense of joy and cheer. You're like, yes, this is cool. This is happening, and like especially me being a fan of that character, I was just like, I was in utter joy seeing that. I was just like, yes, this is the closest we're gonna get to a crossover in this. I'm
Me
all in
too.
about this. I was
That
so happy.
without saying, without giving it away, but that one panel where we get a reveal, and it's just beautiful art by Pepe Larraz, isn't it? It's kind of, it's got a bit
Oh,
of a golden age
dude.
feel to it. The colors, the way it's done.
Oh, it brought me back to like how the way the pages look and felt of that era where everything's so shiny and like it
Yes.
just I love how Pepe he knows how to make that age of comics look that way, and then we need to transition into the modern setting where it's a little bit grimier, and
Mm,
Pepe really does that so beautifully and seamlessly, and he really, oh man, his stuff is killer on this issue. Like everything's a joy to look at, whether it's the golden age looking stuff of that or the mayhem that occurs shortly after. But so obviously we get our big moment here, and we see the Chrononauts and their friends are very excited, and then all of a sudden like, oh crud, guys, we can't stay here. And then before you know it, they come back to the present and they get slaughtered really bad. I was just like, dude, this
I
just
know.
started. Ah! This just started. And I know Mark was kind of hinting, like, hey, I'm crazy enough to do this. And I was like, I originally thought it was going to be Kick Ass because in the
Yeah,
original volume, it
me
was
too.
Dave Lazuski and he had a replacement later on. I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be kick ass. It's gonna be." And even though I was like, "Oh, it's gonna be him," and even though I see it coming, I still feel it. And then it was. I'm like, "Okay, I was wrong." So there you go, Mark Pepe. If you're out there listening or watching, I was wrong, and I still felt like, dude, I was shooken by that. Which is funny
Me,
because I don't even. That's one of the books. Sadly, I've not read. It was the Chrononauts because I know it's him and Sean Gordon Murphy's piece of work,
oh, same
but
for
I
me, Nick. Yeah.
still felt the intensity of that moment. I still felt that, and I think that takes a lot where you only have the context and the background and the knowledge of those characters, and you still feel the impact of that moment. So I was just like,
Mm,
dude, you got me. You got me. And
me too.
right at right after that, man, like seriously, like okay, before we get to the next moment, like what was that like for you to see that transition from once again the gray stream of the world to the nightmare? What was that like for you? Like,
Fantastic transitions, like you say, so good. Yeah, huge contrast. As you said, Nick, we had Mark Miller like hinting on Twitter, who am I going to kill? And he had a list of people. So we're like, oh my God, who's it going to be? We knew people were going to go down in this issue. And I tell you what, he just doesn't put the brakes on it all, does he? It's crazy what happens. And we're trying to keep this spoiler free kind of, aren't we? But man, we can't review this comic without saying what happens, can we?
yeah, we tried and we even talked about this, like how do we do it? And it's
Yeah.
tough. It's really tough. But yeah, the Chrononauts, they have their oh they let's just guys, because once again, we gave the spoiler warning. Yes, it is the Chrononauts who are they're donezo. They are done. And it's like, wow, this was a slaughter. This was a straight up slaughter. And that's saying a lot considering we've seen a lot of stories from Mark's category where there's a lot of brutality,
Oh,
and
yeah.
this is just like, oh, we're just getting it feels almost like we're just getting started with this. And then right before you know it, we transition to more military like dudes, which seems to be set up by Wesley Gibson from Wanted. and the Fox, and they're trying to go after Hit-Girl. And for those in the who are watching this video, if you notice on Hit-Girl's jacket, there's a little pin on her jacket on the passenger seat. It says "Vote
Oh,
Jody," which obviously
oh
Jody
yeah,
from
I saw that.
American Jesus. So I was just like,
Nice.
oh, okay, this is gonna play out very interesting. Considering that we were talking about how the governments are all in operation. Jody,
Yeah.
American Jesus, the president. Dude, this story just it feels so grand on the scale, which is that's saying a lot considering that with Marvel and DC and the crossovers we've had, it when you have all these events, it feels like and nothing changes. Something about this feels like holy crap. Maybe it's because it's the first big crossover from Millar World,
Mm,
but something about this feels like everything counts, everything matters, and no one and nothing is safe with how grand the scale feels. It feels like when I used to look forward to big events like this, the tingling like spider sense, like sensation. Like, oh, what's gonna be next?
mm.
Like that's what I get, and I see this moment here where you got these guys who are sent out to go after Hit Girl. You see the vote Jody Pim, and then before you know it, it's Eggsy from the Kingsman. I was just like, oh yes, yes, yes.
He's
I
just
just
like
like
he just happens to be in her car, doesn't he? It's such a cool opening to him, an intro. He's like there. He's like, okay, whatever you do, don't stop, keep driving. You know, you're gonna
mhm.
get assassinated. There's a hit out on you.
And she's trying to go to a comic shop. She's trying to go to
Yeah.
a comic shop, and I love that self-awareness reference. She goes on Wednesdays. There are 4 shops in the area. We have to have guards on all 4 areas. And he right away like knows the mission. Like, oh, dude, that's like such a cool James Bond like
Mm,
move to do. I love that, and it's perfect too because if you're someone who has not either seen the movies or preferably read the comics, it's one of those moments where it teases you just enough about who he is and what he can do, and you're like I want to know more about Kingsman. And that's how you lure people, someone in, because that's the beauty of the crossover is that if you don't know
mm.
someone and you give them that teasing moment, you're like, I want to know more about that. And with the previous issue, that's what got me to seek out Starlight and to call several shops to go find this copy because I wanted to support a comic shop to get this and not just get it conveniently on Amazon. But anyways, bring it back to that story. Introduction, Kingsman, obviously with Eggsy. I'm like, dude, this is taking off. This is taking off. And for me, it's so crazy because I've been around these characters loosely throughout the years. I'm like, wow, we actually are seeing them together. Because even though I know they were still under the banner Miller World, and there's been subtle nods in each of the books that they kind of live, but to
Mm.
see them all kind of coming together, it feels massive for me. It's like I forgot what this felt like to have like characters come together. Like once again, it reminds me of those Marvel and DC crossovers where you're seeing it actually happen, and that special feeling you get when you're seeing it happen for the first time. It's you're that excited kid, teenager, and in our case, adults. We're just like, wow, this is so cool. This is all happening. And then boom, we got the ambassadors, and they are in panic mode, straight up panic mode, because Pakistan, obviously, as we know from the previous issue, got kidnapped by Mr. Matthew Anderson, Mr. Nemesis, and himself. And it kind of feels like that when you're having a phone call moment in a movie, like a thriller movie, and you're like, we need to find where all of a sudden where's so and so, and all of a sudden that voice comes in, that creepy voice is like, oh, I got him, type of thing. And it feels like that moment with Nemesis. He's like, oh, I got this guy. What are you gonna do about it? And well, of course, this man is relentless, and he has a drop on them. They're thinking we can do this. We got a team here, and it goes so south so fast. And I wonder, and I want to know your theory on this. Do you think it had something to do with Mister UK from issue 5? I assuming that was Mister
Yes.
UK, Mister Baldy,
I
who
think I
was
think you're there, mate. I think you got it.
because of the
You got it. You got
conclusion
it.
of the 6th issue of the Ambassadors. I'm like,
Yeah.
he was in on it. He was in on it. So
It's
what
only
do you
hinted
think?
in it
What's
in
your
this.
theory there?
That's a great theory. Yeah, I'm with you, mate, with that. It's hinted. It's you're not clear, but basically you got Nemesis saying, "I've got a guy who can steal your powers." You know, even just for 5 minutes. So, what are the ambassadors going to do if they lose their powers? And we see what happens out in this, Nick. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. Like Mark Millar was threatening to go there, and he does. He goes there. It's insane. But yeah, great theory. Is it Jamie? Is it Jamie? Maybe I'm not sure.
I
Can't remember his
wonder,
name.
but
Mr. UK.
I think yeah, I think that was Mr. UK because obviously that was issue 5 of the Ambassadors, and that was the issue with Matteo Bifagni on the. I remember that because
Oh
I
yeah.
really enjoyed that issue, and but then it was issue 6, the one with Matteo Scalera, where you start to realize, oh, this guy's a mole for the team. And I was like, oh, this is gonna play
Mm.
on big ways because obviously that's one of the lead-in books into Big Game along with Nemesis Reloaded. And now I feel like this is the first hint that this is a setup here and he's taking part in it. If it's not that, I can't even imagine what else it could be. But regardless, and then of course, after the ambassadors get destroyed, Nemesis is like, oh, we got some vampire, luchador, Spider-Man like kids that take care of it. No, he doesn't literally say it, being figurative here for the viewers out there. And there's a boy from the Midwest, and obviously he is referring to Mr. Huck himself, which once again, viewers, if you're out there
Ooh.
watching and you're getting into big game, and you're like, I need to know about Huck, you got 1 month to correct this. This is from Mark Millar and Raphael Albuquerque and Dave McKeag. Please read Huck. It's outstanding. It's such a wholesome, heartfelt story, very personal. And once again, another story that sticks to landing. I can't recommend Huck enough. Straight up read it because Huck and the nightclub are going to be involved in issue 3. And then he's like, oh, hold up, wait. Before we go, it's almost like self-awareness. Before we go, he needs to leave the reader with something to see a last vile imagery before he goes. He freaking
Mark Miller.
stabs Pakistan in a very brutal fashion that would have not been out of line on like a death metal album cover. And I remember I kind of put the book down. I was just like, and I'm thinking that was such a short read, yet so much happened, and it's only the second issue. Hot damn.
That's it,
Whoa.
Nick. You're right. There's so much happened is a big thing I've been thinking with this series. There's almost too much going on, isn't there? And it's a limited series. This story, this issue, you would have got, say, Marvel and DC, they would have stretched this out for 3 or 4 issues at least. But Mark, he just fills it with story, doesn't he? Great, great moments.
He fills it with a lot of story, and maybe, and I don't know if this is just me, and I don't know if this is just something I'm lucky on, but I feel like for me at least, it's easy for me to keep track of everything. And I don't know if that's because I have some background to these characters, but I feel
Yeah.
like I can keep up with everything and not feel a little bit overwhelmed. And for the characters I don't know as much about, I'm like, okay, I need a little more about it, even though I understand what they're doing. I'm like, I still want to know more, and I don't feel lost. So it's nice that you have that accessibility that if you don't know these characters, you at least know what they're trying to do at that moment. But I still want to know more of the motivations for previous context. And now it does motivate me. And that's what a good story should do when you get enough of a tease of them to say, okay, I need to read that story. This book does it. And obviously, if you're someone who knows this world, you're gonna get the payoff in spades. You're gonna be the biggest winner of them all. The more you know, you're the biggest winner of them all. So yeah, obviously we have our theories. We think where this could go. I have said I want to see what happens when Huck and Nemesis come to blows. And
Oh,
well,
yeah.
I didn't think that was gonna happen. I thought, oh man, that'd be a cool like crossover of a fight to happen. That's like almost like a Hulk Thor fight, Hulk Batman fight, whatever you want to call
Mm.
it, because that is the epitome of Hulk. Huck is very muscle bound, and obviously Nemesis is like a Batman level of 30 steps ahead of the game of intelligence and
Yeah.
deadly. So I'm like, anything can go. And if I had to give my one nitpick, because I don't know if I find it as a complaint, maybe it's just a nitpick, but I feel like everything happened so fast. But
Oh, yeah.
maybe that's also maybe the point of the issue, that this issue is meant to be a roller coaster, just to well give you a punch in the face after another punch in the face after another punch in the face,
Mm.
because it does leave you breathless. So it makes up for that also with a lot happens. A lot happens. So I could forgive that quickness. And also when I was able to reread, it helped me spawn up some of those theories I had, whether it was the Watchmen, the deconstruction, all that stuff. And of course, no, with the stuff with Jody, American Jesus, there's a lot we can dissect off of this. And I think when we have it together in a collected edition, I think this is going to be one of those content that's going to benefit from those little things you pick up off on reread. So overall, though, I think this is a very strong issue, and I will go as far. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a fan of Mark's work and obviously Pepe Larraz's work, but this does get a high, high recommend, and it is accessible for people who are not familiar with Millar World to get into these 2 issues. And once again, if you are someone who knows it, you get all the riches yourself. So, what are your final thoughts, Mr. Waki, on this story, this comic?
Like you,
and where do you stand with that?
yeah, just like you, mate. There's almost too much going on if you have to give one criticism. And I was just rechecking. It's issue 2 of only 5 issues. This miniseries to fit in all of Mark Millar's like multiverses, all his characters. I don't know how he's going to do it, but so far, I think he's done a really good job. I love the little dig that Nemesis gives to Hook by calling him, what's it, that big dopey idiot in the
Midwest boy, something like
So
that.
cool.
Yeah, I'll do. I had
Yeah.
to check out that too.
The humor, Mark Millar's humor, we know he's funny. We know he likes to take risks. We know he pushes the limits, but it's just a really fun book as well. And it did, like you, Nick, it left me breathless at the end. I was like, oh my god, what just happened? And I went back and reread it straight away. So, oh my, that is crazy. But yeah, great fun.
All right, there you go, guys. And before we go on out, guys, if you can find it at your shop, I got the Linnell U variant, which has Super Crooks and Superior.
Awesome.
I would say this is a really awesome cover from Linnell. If I butcher that name, I apologize, sir, but I love this variant cover. I'm not really much of a variant guy, but seeing the Super Crooks and Superior on the same cover, I had to. I straight
Wow.
up had to. Don't get me wrong. That beautiful Pepe Larraz cover is very tempting, but when I saw this from
Oh,
Linnell,
yeah.
I'm like, dude, I want it. And then, well, $4 later.
How was it, Nick?
$5
When you
later.
went to the comic shop, did you have did they have many copies? Was it easy to get a
I
copy?
went right when it opened.
Okay, nice.
I was that guy. Like, and out here in America, dude, it's really filthy hot. Really
Yeah.
filthy hot right now.
Same
in
here
my
in
part of the
Japan. It's
country.
crazy.
And I was just like, okay, rain, storm, tidal wave, snow, heat. I gotta get my copy of Big
I'm
Game.
going.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do this. And then I did it, and I'm like, I remember just feeling victorious, just walking out of the copy, saying, "Yes, I can't wait to get home after work and read this." And
Nice
then
one.
I read it, and I read it twice. I'm just like, damn. So yeah, that all said, that's our wrap for Big Game number 2. Wakizashi's Tea House, everybody, sir, could you plug in your channel what you got coming up? Because I want people to subscribe to your channel, and we'll see what you got. Because I like your channel, and I want more people to discover your channel. So what you got coming up, sir?
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, mate. I'm hoping to do a review of Big Game issue 2, but I just dropped a review of the latest Amazing Spider-Man. That was yesterday. So yeah, surprisingly, Nick, this might surprise you. It's almost a good issue. It's probably one of the best issues in Zeb Wells' run. Seriously. Yeah, it was Craven's back. It's good to see Craven. Well, the latest version of Craven. I've always had a big
we all
soft
know what
spot
happened
for
in
him.
Spencer run. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whole other,
yeah.
that's a rabbit hole conversation.
Oh God, yeah, don't get us started. But yeah, I appreciate you
won't.
having me on. It's been great talking Big Game with you, and I can't wait for next issue.
Yeah, no, and hey, thank you for taking part of this. It was a pleasure to discuss this with you, and I'm sure this will not be the last time we talk comic books. And chat, thank you for watching this video. Go subscribe to Gray at Wakizashi's Tea House. All right, thank you, and have a great day. And lay down your soul to the gods, rock and roll.